Hello everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to my romance book recommendations. Valentine's Day is almost here, and it means that this is the time to talk about romance books, to read romance books, and to recommend romance books. Romance has been always one of my most favorite genres. I really love romance, and especially in the past few months, I'm getting more and more into romance, and I really wanted to recommend some of my recent favorite romances, especially for Valentine's Day, and just in general, if you're looking for romance recommendations, this is the video for you. Now, all the romances here today are going to be new adult or adult romances, and all of them are also contemporary romance. I don't have any fantasy romance or things like this, just contemporary romances, new adult and adult. And also some of the books that I'm going to recommend today are steamy, not all of them, but some of them. But just in general, my most favorite romances of the recent months. I really love them, and I'm really excited to share those with you because I think all of them are so great. So I think that let's just start with the first book. And the first book that I'm going to recommend is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. Now, this isn't a steamy book, this is just a fun rom-com, and I think this book is so nerdy, but in the best way possible. I really enjoy this romance. We are basically following a woman that is meeting someone that works in a company, that in this company they are working on some kind of app that can match people based on their DNA. Basically, the idea is that people will do this DNA test, and then the system can match them, and the system can give a score to basically say how much two people can match each other biologically. And the whole idea is already very interesting, but I also felt like the execution was really good. It was a really fun rom-com, like the main characters getting matched with someone because of this app, and they also get really high scores, so the whole idea was just really interesting. I feel like the plot was really good here, and in general I do really love Christina Lauren books, and I feel like this is one of the best books that I read by them. And also this book is really nerdy, and it really reminds me The Love Hypothesis, so if you love this book, and I know that this book is so popular, like so many people love it, I read both of them, and both of them really reminded me each other. So I feel like if you love The Love Hypothesis, you will really love The Soulmate Equation. I'm also pretty sure that it was released in 2021, like it's a pretty new release, and I just feel like in general, if you're looking for a really nerdy rom-com, this is the book for you. Now, the next book is the exact opposite from The Soulmate Equation, because this is the most steamy book out of this list. This was also my most favorite romance that I read in 2021, and this book is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I love this book so much, and honestly I didn't expect to love it this much. This book is really steamy, and it has an age gap romance in it. Basically, the main character is getting involved with the father of our boyfriend, so this is the boyfriend's dead trope, and I don't really love this trope. I also don't really love age gap romances, and although this is really out of my comfort zone, I still enjoyed it so much because the writing in this book and how the characters acted, everything was so genuine and relatable, to the amount that although I don't usually read those kind of tropes, I really enjoyed it because I understood the characters. I really understood how they came to this position, and I really cared for them, and I really wanted them to be together. And it's definitely a romance book that I just couldn't stop reading. Like, it was just so fun. I really love the characters, like they were so amazing. And again, it's really steamy. It's definitely the most steamy book that I have here on this recommendations list. It was really steamy, but the best theme ever. Like, it was just so good. I really enjoyed it. I really want to check more books by Penelope Douglas because it was just so amazing. And yes, definitely a book that I would really recommend checking. Now, the two next books are from the same author. The first one is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. Now, Mariana Zapata has a ton of books, and all of them are really slow burn romances. And I'm usually a really plot-driven reader. When there is a book that is only character-driven with almost no plot at all, it's really hard for me. But when it comes to Mariana Zapata books, I feel like no matter how long they are, it's still so fun to read them. She just makes you really connected to the characters. And in The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, we're following a woman that was working as a personal assistant of a really famous, I think, football player, some kind of sports player, like this is a sport romance, and she was his personal assistant, and she quit her job because she really hated working there. She felt like nobody really respected her, but after she quits, this football player is really asking her to come back to be his personal assistant. And I don't want to make too much spoilers, but it gets to another thing. There is kind of a fake dating here, but just the whole story was so good. It's my first ever book that I read by Mariana Zapata, and it was just so good. Like, I enjoyed it so much, couldn't stop reading it. I actually felt for the characters, and again, no matter how slow her books, I still really enjoy them. And that also takes me to the second book by Mariana Zapata that I really want to recommend. I loved it even more than The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, and this is All Rhodes Lead Here. I love this book so much. Basically, this is a small town romance, which I personally really love. And here we're following a woman that got through a really bad divorce something like a year ago, and since then she just tries to find herself and what she's going to do with her life. And when she was a child, her mother passed away and she moved with her uncle and her aunt, but now in the current time of the story, she's deciding to go back to the town where she lived in when she was a child with her mother. Basically also try to be more connected to her mother, but just to start something new and to see if this is the place for her. And this book was just so emotional but so good. Like, I really cared about the characters. It's long, but still I couldn't stop reading it. I really got to the emotions of them and I really cared about them. It was definitely a really emotional read. I cried a lot while I read it, but it was just so sweet. And also the love interest there, I really loved him. I feel like the relationship and just the whole romance was so good and slow burn, but in a way that it makes it so genuine, like real people. And yes, I just really love her books. I think that in general her writing is so great, and I really want to check more books by her, but I feel like those two books are just really amazing. Now the next book that I want to recommend is a book by Colleen Hoover. Now Colleen Hoover is one of my most favorite authors. I started reading her books so many years ago, and until today she's one of my most favorite authors. I love her books so much, especially because I always feel like there is something more. It's not just a romance read. There is always something more and something that surprises you. And in general, I think that all of her books are great, but the book that I want to recommend today is Regretting You. And the reason is because I feel like if you are looking for a romance read, this is a very good place to start, especially because it's a dual POV and we have two romances here. Also a YA romance and also an adult romance. I categorize it as a new adult. It's not steamy at all. It feels at some places like YA because we have a YA character, but basically we're following here a mother and her teenage daughter, and this book was just so emotional. It's also about romance and the romance of the two characters and like their plots, but also the relationship between them, between the mother and the daughter. I cried a lot. Like, Colleen Hoover always makes me cry, and I did enjoy less the plot of the teenage daughter, but although I still really loved it, and the plot of the mother was just so good. I just couldn't stop reading this book. It was so amazing. And again, in general, I really love Colleen Hoover books, but this is definitely one of my most favorite ones. I really enjoyed it and the characters were just so good, and this book just had a lot of things in it. So if you're looking for a romance contemporary, I would definitely recommend it, especially because it's a double romance with two romances. Now the next book that I want to recommend is a series, and the thing is that this is a very long series, but I really want to mention it because it's really underrated. And this is The Boys of Tommen by Chloe Walsh. Currently there is two books in the series, and the thing that those two books are so long, like 900 pages, really long. But this is basically a high school romance. It's not a YA, it's more of a new adult. There is a lot of trigger warnings and there is a lot of hard topics in this series, and we are following a teenager that is moving to a new school because in her previous school she was getting really bullied, and now she is moving to a new place to start from the beginning, and she's meeting a boy there. And the thing is that on one hand the series is really trashy, but like in a really good way. Just a series that is trashy but you really want to continue it because it's so much fun. But on the other hand, although it's trashy, it had also really deep things, and I feel like the characters themselves were really deep. Like, I feel that they were mature at some points, and at some points they were childish, but in a way that made this whole story more genuine because they acted like real teenagers. And the two first books are following one couple, but the next books in the series that don't have a release date yet, but the next of the books are going to follow each book a different couple. But I feel like in general this is a really great series, and it's really underrated. It was just so great. I read the whole two books in less than a week. I just couldn't leave them. It's definitely a series that I think you should check, especially because it's underrated, and I really wanted to mention it because for me it was my first 5 stars of 2022. Like, I really loved it. Now the next book is another small town romance. I really love small town romances, and this is also a part of a series. I read only the first book, but I feel like the first book is great and you can read it as a standalone, and this is The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. Basically here we are following a woman or a teenager, I feel, but it's a new adult, it's not a YA, but we are following a woman that is living with her mother and with her stepfather, and basically basically she doesn't really know her father because he lives in a very small town, I think near Alaska or something like this, and her mother walked away from this town when the main character was a baby, but now the father of the main character is getting sick, and because of it he's reaching out to her, basically gets to know her because maybe there won't be any other chance in the future. So the main character is taking a flight and she's flying to meet him to basically get to know her father, although she doesn't really know him. And this book in general is really, really emotional, and it had a really good romance. Definitely a romance book, and it's about family. Just the whole book was so emotional, but definitely those kind of romance books that you start reading and you can't really stop reading them because they are so good. I really enjoyed it, and it's also a very popular romance series, and I really get why. Like, the first book was so much fun, but yes, this book was just so emotional and I really, really enjoyed it. And the next book is a book that I recommended already a lot of times on my channel. It's a summer romance, and yes, we are in winter, but I really want to recommend it anyway because it's definitely one of my most favorite romances that I read last year, and I can't do a romance recommendations video without mentioning it. And this is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. I love this book so much. It was so good and so relatable. And basically we're following Piper. She is a really party girl. Like, she always loved to go to parties and to be with friends. And she, I think, 27 years old. She doesn't have a job. She's getting money from her parents, like from her mother and stepfather. But in the beginning of the story, she's getting arrested, and her parents are sending her to a small town to run a bar to basically prove them that she can take care of herself. Another small town romance that obviously I love. And this town is the town that her father lived in before he passed away. So it's also about her feeling more connected to her father. But this book was so steamy and so good. Like, the romance here is definitely one of the best romances that I read. I really love the relationship between the main character and the love interest. The personality of both of them is so good. And this is the sunshine and grumpy trope. And I really loved it. Like, I feel that the combination of those two was so good. It was so steamy and I enjoyed it so much. Again, it's one of my most favorite romances that I read last year. Until today, I can't really stop thinking about it, and I can't stop recommending it because it was just so good. Definitely a romance that I really, really love, and there is also going to be a sequel releasing really, really soon, so I really can't wait to finally read it. And yes, this romance is just so great. Honestly, I won't stop recommending it. And yes, this was my romance book recommendations. I'm so excited that I shared all of those books with you. Those are just my recent most favorite romances. I really loved all of those romances. All of them were at least 4 stars. It was so fun to read them, and I really, really hope that this video was helpful for you and that you will actually enjoy those romances because I think they are great. I just love reading romance so much. I feel like this is definitely a guilty pleasure or something that I really enjoy from. It's just so fun to read a contemporary romance. Yes, I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone!